West European Chaos of 2046. Meanwhile, in the Nordics, there is not much to do, but Sweden thinks of an invasion from Denmark. Here in the Baltics, from Estonia, the Baltic Assembly was formed, making it the Baltic Union. And they were given permission from Russia to keep Kaliningrad because it was useless anyway. Finland likes the stance of Estonia and asks if they could join Finland. And they said yes. So Finland was getting all the riches. Except for some small islands in Estonia. The Kuressaare. But then, from Pamu, they launched bombing raids and an invasion on these islands. And Finland owns the Baltic Peninsula. Meanwhile, in chaotic Germany, the Poles launched an invasion in Halle from Leipzig and Potsdam from the Danish, and from Frankfurt am Main from Belgium, Luxembourg. But that was only the one Luxembourg because the other one was taken from via Arlon. And from Hanover, they took Erfurt, and that were the Antwerp forces. Meanwhile, some Dutch provinces were still alive, but they were threatened by the Danes if they wouldn't give up. But then, Flevoland did this. A huge offensive from Oldenburg and Münster, and took Arnhem with them. But then the Danish launched a full-scale invasion in Oldenburg, Zwolle, and Münster and Arnhem. But then Lelystad was the biggest threat for the Danish. And later, North and South Holland unified into Holland, but then Utrecht started invading them, marking the surrender. And they made an agreement with Flevoland that they take the northern half. Now, Friesland and Groningen were big friends, but this time they wanted it more, and started invading Danish forts, and even attacking Lelystad, but then Flevoland got there, and so did the Danes. But then they accidentally invaded Denmark, and Friesland was given a wipeout, and then got conquered. Now this was difficult, and the Danish asked the Brits for some help. They sent from Norwich, Ipswich, Cambridge, Chelmsford, Maidstone, Guildford, London, Portsmouth, Bournemouth, Plymouth, Cardiff, Truro, Swansea, Ayr, Liverpool, Manchester, Douglas, Derry, Belfast, Glasgow, Dundee, Stirling, Fort William, Elgin, Aberdeen, Perth, and Forfar, and especially Edinburgh, Morpeth, Durham, Middlesbrough, Newcastle, Whitehaven, Barrow-in-Furness, and Doncaster and Scarborough, and Kingston upon Hull, especially from Manchester and York, Leeds and Sheffield, Lincoln, Derby, Worcester, Wolverhampton, and some more cities, and send them into Utrecht to fight Flevoland. And they took it, and so did it for Utrecht. But then, back in the middle of southern France, the Brits made a landing in Antwerp, liberated and they sent it from Cornwall and started in the middle of southern France. Andorra and Italy started further invading in the land. And so did Italy, taking a few. And then a massive offensive from the Saarland took southern France. Now the French were circled. And then Namur forces in Troy take out some provinces. And the Antwerp forces from Versailles into Blois. And then in Orléans, and then from Dijon, a huge offensive, marking the surrender of France, carving it all up. And now, the UK finally decided to let Ireland have Northern Ireland, making this a unified Ireland, and they remained neutral for the rest. Now this time, Romania asked for some coastline from Ukraine, and Ukraine was all for that. And then, Moldova, making this the Romanian Union. Now, the Balkans. Ho ho, what the heck is happening in the Balkans? Nothing, right? Well. But first, Monaco had an agreement with Italy that they took Nice. Unifying the Monacan land. But surprisingly, France was still fighting in Corsica. But then, Monaco and Italy, but mostly Monaco, made a huge offensive in Bastia, and the Italians took Ajaccio. And the Italians accidentally took Bastia, but then Monaco retook it. And the end of the French forces was there. Then Melilla got attacked, and Ceuta the same. The Brits started attacking from Gibraltar into Cadiz, Malaga, and Seville. But then, the Spanish made a huge comeback, taking them both. And then, taking back Ceuta and Melilla, and for revenge, got in. And then they signed a peace treaty. Algeria and Tunisia were unifying. And everyone was all for that. Now, back to the Balkans. Italy and Slovenia unified after a treaty was signed. Now the Italians were in the Balkans. And Croatia was all for that, since they also signed a peace treaty. They also signed a treaty and also were unifying with Italy. But then Hungary invaded Serbia and even Italy. But then Serbian forces made a huge comeback, hitting Hungarian land. And so did Italy, since they were invaded by Hungary too, marking the surrender of Hungary. And Hungary was carved up between the two nations, since they signed a treaty on how to divide Hungary after they invaded them. Now, the map of Europe seems way chaotic than it more is now. Well. Let's look at the Caucasus. Armenia finally stopped fighting with Azerbaijan since they wanted to recreate Transcaucasia. And they were all for that. And Transcaucasia was successfully created. Meanwhile in Africa, nothing really much was happening. But Ethiopia signed a treaty with Djibouti that was actually accidentally invaded by Azerbaijan while they weren't even traveling to Ethiopia. But then Ethiopia successfully took the accidentally invaded land. And this time they also wanted to bring back the Ethiopian Empire. But then Eritrea started first attacking from the north and also in Djibouti. But then Ethiopia made a huge difference between them and making them back into Ethiopian territory, making it back the Ethiopian Empire of Abyssinia. Not really much was going on in Qatar and Doha. And an attack from Doha unified Bahrain and Qatar together. Now, let's see what Asia is doing. Not really much, but Pakistan wants to create the stands. And then they started invading Afghanistan. And that was to send aid to Europe. Under a special treaty of the United Nations, they were allowed to send aid to Europe because it was so chaotic there. Further up, Kazakhstan refused because they hated Europe, and this time Pakistan made a huge invasion of Kazakhstan, and they finally agreed to join because the relation with Europe started to be better after tense relations. After better relations with Europe, the stands were successfully formed after Kazakhstan was fully conquered, and they're already sending aid to Europe. Now, Italy was eager to take Vatican City and San Marino, but then it was actually an Uno reverse card pulled on Italy, and they started invading Italy. All hope was lost for the Italians, taking Rome as well. But then, the stands were ready to send aid to Europe, especially to Italy. Landings started successfully in Sicily. And then, Italy, with much stronger force, with help from the stands, started invading Vatican City, or should they say, the Papal States, and took them. And so with San Marino, and then they completely were gone. And the stands went back to Asia. Since Italy was back in its position. Now, what will happen next with this chaotic abomination of Europe? Will Portugal go into war? Will Bulgaria go into war? Will Bosnia, Montenegro, and other countries go into war? Let's find out. Because this map of Europe is already chaotic as it is. Let's find out in the third part.